Hey, what's up, people? It's a new day. Okay, it's 12 o'clock. Late start. Yesterday, we only did 1 hour. I gotta get up to 2 hours, bro, a day. Like, I gotta do that. Anyway, we continue population of the list. Which list is that? Well, it is the master save object list, and we've been going through each file to determine which data points need to be saved. We stopped at line 222 in things to do. So this is going to be just part 8 of that, basically. I am tired. Always tired. Pretty much always tired. It's basically work out a lot. I work at a very difficult job. It's very strenuous. Fucking tired. Getting shredded, though. Getting shredded. Alright, set our timer here. Got hot up in here all of a sudden. Let's get this started. I got a membership offer at a different gym. It's like $7 more a month, but they have like pools and stuff. I think it's like a nicer gym, you know. It's got like fucking pickleball and like tennis and shit. It's got all the fun, cool stuff. I think I might switch to them for the summer subscription, just to see. Is my volume working? I didn't do a test, and yeah, it works. It's working. There it goes. Bro, I swear, when I get on you know what I see when I get on Facebook? I see, like, people that post conversations that they have with, like, creeps and stuff on. Like, that is what always pops up in my feed. Like, why? Why is that such a popular thing? I don't understand. Like, I think girls get like a satisfaction out of like being messaged by guys, and then they're like eager to post about it. And yeah, usually it's like some creepy dude talking some shit, but it's just like, it's strange to me. It's a very strange phenomenon. Anyway, neither here nor there. Timer set. Let's get to work. Okay. That's where we stopped. So I put C lines 135. I meant 135 to 136. Revisit these attributes. Shouldn't they be saved? Okay, so we're going to go back. We're going to look at these. And why was I wondering? So these are the two right here. I just put this, and now we're gonna go back and revisit them and see if why did I say no to selected choice? I mean, it's probably for good reason. You know, it's probably like not used on the client side or something like that. I probably should have just put a little note whenever I put like yes or no. I should add like a little note maybe as to why it's a no. Okay, so first of all, it's in change attribute list. That's just the time tube. That's nothing. Client back. We don't need to look at that. Selected choice. Okay, time tube again. This is checked because it's the menu screen, so it's checked on the servers. No, client side. This is client side. Okay, so based on this right here, well, we don't want to save that though, because like this is pre-game. If it disconnected, well, you're not even actually connected. Like, you're not even really connected to like, you're not online at this point. So this is, we don't need to save that so far. You're not even online. Now we have where it's actually created in game. Okay, so it's a property. We call the setter whenever we set it. Where are we at here? Let's see. Okay, so if we do mouse button down and multiple choice active on the client side, if we click and multiple choice active is true, then it sets our selected choice. Okay. Okay, and I'm like, this should be saved then, because well, so actually in this scenario, the multiple choice active would be set to true. That would be in a while loop. That would happen in the context of that would happen in the context of well, after it was received, and as soon as multiple choice active was set to true, at that point in time they would be choosing from their option. It would enter into the while loop inside of the setter, multiple choice active inside of that setter. Inside of that while loop, it's going to continue to call draw window main, and it's going to allow the player to make his choice. So I'm wondering, how exactly does this work? Because if we're in a while loop and the only thing that's happening in the while loop is draw window main, well, inside of draw window main is the event handler. Okay, that's how it works. So draw window main continuously calls the event handler. It draws, and it's like a constant thing. So eventually, let's say multiple choice active is set to true. They're choosing their multiple between their two choices to click. They're in that while loop. and then they get disconnected. Well, whenever they reconnect, multiple choice active needs to be loaded back in, which I'm pretty positive that one is. So as long as multiple choice active is loaded back in as true, then it would bring them back to this point. So they would be choosing again. Now, if they did click their choice and selected choice right here, this line ran. Well, if that line ran and we didn't save it, that would be okay unless it made it to this line. Because once it makes it to this line, this is going to set multiple choice active back to false, and that will get saved. So whenever it loads back in, well, hold up, wait. So it's not actually gonna save every iteration of draw window main, and since the while loop is not looping through the main while loop, but it's looping through an internal while loop, a separate while loop, that actually wouldn't like have any bearing on this being saved or not. So technically, like, the last checkpoint would be the checkpoint at which they received the data that allowed them to enter into the while loop, the inner while loop, which was the multiple choice active value being changed from false to true. And that gets transferred over the network. The client receives it, applies the data eventually, and as soon as the setter gets called on multiple choice active, then we enter into that inner while loop. So the issue here is, well, there's not really a quote-unquote issue. Ultimately, selected choice, in this case at least, doesn't need to be saved because it is it's not until the end of this function, because it's a single threaded operation on the client side, it's not until the end of this function that the main while loop would be iterated through again. So we wouldn't hit another save checkpoint. The last save checkpoint would have been prior to this being set to true, which would just basically revert the game back to the point in time where they were going to make their multiple choice. Like, it would just reset it. They would just make that, they'd have to make the choice again. So if they did choose their selected choice, even if it made it down to here, it would just actually end up running through this function. And let's say even if it like went all the way down, you know, to the very end right here, which technically the last thing it would check for would be this right here, if event type is equal to key down, or rather this one, it would end up checking this one as well. After it ran that line, then it would, well, yeah, it couldn't. Yeah, it would run this line, and then it would, the interpreter or whatever you call it, would go back to the setter, that while loop, but on the next iteration through the while multiple choice active is equal to true, stay in this while loop, well, that clause would no longer be true anymore. It would now be false at that point. So after this ran, and then this line ran, and then this line ran, it would then go back to the setter, the multiple choice active setter. Let's see if we can find that real quick. Alright, right here. And
So, what did you want to talk about?
well, it doesn't say while true. I thought for sure it was a while true thing.
The best of the best, like Sephiroth.
Wait a second. So is this not a while true? I thought that it was, though. Well, this isn't right. I thought that multiple choice active was the one that handled the while loop here. Core funk.
What was his name again?
Cloud Stripe.
Okay. Now I'm confused because I thought for sure this was part of a while loop.
Cloud, I have a favor to ask of you. Run away. You have to.
Multiple choice active. Oh man. Let's see.
I'd worry less about the planet and more about the next 5 seconds.
Here it is. Okay, multiple choice function. If string 2 is not equal to none, multiple choice active is equal to true. And then it says while multiple choice active is equal to true, pass.
I know these people, and I know they're never gonna let Erin go. She's the last living ancient on the planet.
So,
The source.
if change attribute this is
Nova.
so it would enter into this. So this would happen, then the setter well, we would set it, the setter would run. The setter actually doesn't have the while loop. So the while loop isn't in the setter anymore, but it is, like, it's still going to happen. It's gonna
Just want to do everything in my power.
enter into the while loop right here. It's gonna say elif CS for client side, then it's gonna enter into this while loop, and then it's going to draw the window. So yeah, it's gonna do all that. So it is the process that I thought. It is gonna continue to draw the window without actually entering into the main while loop, but actually I don't know about this. multiple choice function. Does this get called on the client side? This is confusing to me. This is like, I don't, where does this get called? This only gets called there. What is this? elif next string, next function string. Is equal to MC. Multiple choice function. Then we say CLS multiple choice function. This has become confusing to me. I thought I fully understood how this worked, but okay, so ultimately this is, it's more complicated, of course it's more complicated than what I thought it was. So let's run through how this actually happens. So multiple choice function gets called through progression text assign function. So whenever the progression text is changed, apparently we pass in the class object, the string, the game object. This sets the progression text. It checks the next function string because it's either going to be enter, continue, or multiple choice. All right. And then we go here to progression. This is where we run the progression text assign function, and then we pass in MC for multiple choice. Okay. So that inherently calls the multiple choice function right here. And then this all happens server side. Once it enters into this function, it's then going to set multiple choice active equal to true, and it would actually enter into this section right here. So while multiple choice active was true, it would pass. Now in the meantime, it's going to wait in this while loop on the server side. The server side's other thread is going to send this data over the network. The client is going to receive it, and then it's going to set multiple choice active to true. Now when it sets multiple choice active to true, like, my question is, do we use this do we use this? Is there the while loop that gets run on the client side? That's what I need to know. Which is basically the where is it? Right here. Does this happen on the client side? That influences like my decision. Like I need to know that. And the way that it could happen is through the calling of the multiple choice function. And the way that that happens is through the next func string equaling MC. So really I think what I need to look for is this. MC. So this always happens through progression. Yeah, so like what I'm suspecting that happens is this. What actually happens on the client side is not what I thought happened. What actually happens is that we have selected choice Alright, let's go to selected choice. Not there. Not there. Not that. Here. So now selected choice has nothing to do with any while loop. It is connected to multiple choice active. So the only like place this is messed with on the client side is right here. And it relies on the behavior of multiple choice active and whether or not this is associated with a while loop. And this code is so convoluted and complicated now. I did not realize it was like that. It's like this leads to that, which leads to this, which leads to that. It's a fucking string of nightmares, all linked together. I hate that sort of thing. Why did I code it that way? That's a really good question. Sometimes you have to code things that way, but anyway. I just gotta figure this out. I didn't want to spend time on this, but I have to. Oh well. Okay, so multiple choice function. This doesn't get called on the client side. It just doesn't. Like, it doesn't. I don't think it does. The only time it gets called is in the preliminary section. We're not worried about that. It gets called inside progression text assign function. This function does not get called this doesn't get called. It happens on the server side. And on the client side, it's not used. On the client side, the only thing they get is the actual changed values here. So whenever the server side runs this progression text assign function, it eventually calls this multiple choice function, which in turn sets multiple choice active to true and enters into a while loop, which is the one that I was previously referring to. That used to be inside of the multiple choice active setter. It is no longer inside of that setter, which means that I don't know if multiple choice active causes the client side to enter into an internal while loop, or whether there is just a single while loop. Like, it iterates through the main while loop, and it looks to me like it just will continue to iterate through the main while loop. But I could have sworn we had already tested the game after implementing this, and the behavior was exactly the same. So does setting progression text inherently trigger the progression text function? Is that what happens? Does setting progression text inherently modify on the client side? Does it trigger that function? Because that would be another layer of to the operation, the operational onion that we have going on here. And I need to make sure I look at all of the layers before I assume anything, because it's going to determine whether or not my decision that I make is going to cause bugs. So here we have progression text, progression text setter. Okay, so it doesn't end up calling that function. So there is no function that's called on the client side, as far as I can tell. All right, so we're getting it figured out now. It's still gonna take me a little bit longer. So ultimately, on the client side, like this code here, this might be dead code. Like this might not actually happen. I'm gonna put a note here because I'm trying to understand how it still functions properly despite not having the internal while loop. I suppose what happens is the reason that it works on the client side is because once multiple choice active gets set to true, on the client side, you are actually still receiving data. Like it's still going through the entire main while loop, but because the server side is no longer sending any more information because it is actually waiting on the client, then it simply acts as if it's in its own while loop, but it's actually in the main while loop. So it is continuing to iterate through the main while loop over and over again. So this is actually really important because I didn't realize that. I thought that it was going through an internal while loop. So this actually would influence my decision on whether or not certain things need to be saved. So I'm just scanning real quick, and I'm checking to see, like, input text final. That one I think was no for a different reason. But so now we're finally back to where we started here with selected choice. Now I understand again how it all works. Okay, so it does indeed iterate through the main while loop again and again during this section right here. So that means that once it runs this line, and then all this, once it gets to here, it will have set multiple choice active would be true, obviously, which would allow us to, whenever we clicked, it would enter into this section. It would set selected choice to whatever one that they chose. It would then set multiple choice active to false, which is very important, because once it finishes running this, it's going to run this line, it's going to run this next if, but it's not going to enter into it. This should probably actually be elif, honestly, but it's not like a huge deal. I'm not really worried about that. It could cause a bug, so I'd rather not touch it. Reviewed, and I don't believe this is actually executed, since the CS never calls this function. It actually just uses the main while loop since it never receives more data, because the server side is waiting in the above while loop for the CS to respond. The main while loop acts the same as this loop would. So we can probably delete this. Yeah, I'm like 99% sure that's dead code. Alright, so back to this though. Right here. So as we were saying, it's going to go to that if, then it's going to go to the next if. At that point in time, it's going to be done with this event handler function, which it's going to finish running the draw window main function call, and then it's going to finish running the rest of that main while loop iteration, and then it's going to go to the next while loop iteration. So let's say we're here, we click our choice, we make our selected choice, right? This value gets set, but let's just say right now we don't save it, so it doesn't get saved. Multiple choice active gets set to false, which will be saved at the beginning of the next while loop iteration. So if it makes it to the beginning of the next while loop iteration, which would be prior to it Well, selected choice gets added to the transferred data, right? Oh, see, I'm slipping here. Yeah, I'm slipping. None of that matters, because as long as this data associated with selected choice gets transferred, it gets added to the change attribute list. Once it gets added to the change attribute list, it's then going to, so we set selected choice, which actually inherently adds the value to the change attribute list, which does get saved. Now, because that gets saved, let's say we get here to where multiple choice active gets set to false. It makes it to the next while loop iteration. So if it disconnects between this time and the beginning of the next while loop iteration, aka the next save point, it's just gonna revert back to this point in time. It's gonna revert back to this event handler call where multiple choice active is set to true. And then once multiple choice active is set to true, whenever you know, it's, your multiple choice will exist. Eventually they're gonna click, but if it does make it to the next iteration of the while loop, God, this is such a nightmare to go through. It's terrible. If it does make it through this section and gets to the next while loop iteration, then this selected choice will be set in stone. Although it is not saved specifically, the data is inherently saved, like, by the nature, like, it's not needed on the client side. It's needed on the server side. Does that make sense? We're literally just setting it to transfer it, and then we throw it away on the client side. We don't actually check this client side. So the only thing that we're worried about is, does it get packaged and sent to the server? And the answer to that would be, well, yes. If it makes it to the next while loop iteration, it would be saved through the saving of the changed attribute list on the client side. Now, if it didn't, then we still don't really have a bug, a problem, because then it's just going to rerun. It's going to revert back to the last while loops state, wherein multiple choice active would be true, because it would be before this. Does that make sense? Because once this runs and then it makes it to the next while loop iteration, when we load back in, it's not going to be set to true anymore, so it wouldn't enter into this section. But so these two are basically like together, and which means basically we're safe, i.e. the final decision is we don't actually need to save selected choice. Pretty certain. That was probably the hardest one to go through and to reason. Yeah, that was actually pretty difficult. I'm just going to be honest. I really don't enjoy doing that sort of thing. I don't like the fact that the logic is even that complicated. It shouldn't be that complicated. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be that complicated. So I'm just pissed off that this game is even that, like, complex. I don't necessarily know how much more simple it could be, though. You know what I mean? Like, there does have to be a certain level of complexity, right? So I can't be mad at it. That's how it has to be to work. It's like an engine. Engines are kind of complicated. It's just the way it is. You can't really, like, sorry, it's complicated. That's why they get paid a lot of money. Anyway, that was a nightmare. The answer is still no, and we're just gonna put a little note. Definitely not necessary to save. Not needed on CS. Plus is added to change attribute list at time of change. Definitely safe. Like, we're good. Now let's check out clicked card. It's always some other shit I gotta look at, huh? That's the thing about having a big project like this. It just becomes daunting to review code. You know what I mean? Like, it just becomes challenging to even review the code because it's so much. It takes a lot of time. So if you have a question about it and you don't completely, fully, 100% understand it, and you can't just like pretend to understand it, because you're dumb if you do that and you regret it. Can't be lazy. So alright, click card, game. What are we doing here? So we got click cards list, not worried about that. Click card. Alright, so clicked card here. This is where it gets received. Okay. I don't really care about that. We're looking for clicked card itself. Clicked card, that's internal. Okay, so it is a property. So let me think about it. Just, you know, the flow without looking at the code. I think that's more important than the actual looking at the code anyway. So click card active gets set to true, transferred to client. Client sets it to true. Then main while loop keeps iterating. An event handler is checking to see if you have clicked a card. Once you actually click the card, it gets set to the clicked card namespace. It gets assigned. That in turn calls the setter, which in turn will add it to the changed attribute list, just like with the selected choice. So the clicked card probably isn't necessary to have on the it's not necessary to have on the client side. Probably. If it's not necessary to have on the client side and the only purpose of it is basically just to transfer to the server side, then we don't need to save it. And I think that it's pretty much that simple. I probably could have saved more time looking at selected card if I would have just used that principle. But I was confused about the entire process overall, so I did need to review that. But as long as like this is not needed on the client side, this is not something that is set on the server side and transferred to the client. This is something that is set on the client side through the event handler and then pushed from client to server. So yeah, it goes from client to server. I think I'm just gonna look at this code and make sure that is indeed the case. So let me go all the way back up real here to the beginning of game and just focus. Clicked card. Okay. Card. It doesn't do anything special. It just transfers. We use a lock. Okay. That's click card list. Oh shit. I hit the wrong button there. Okay, continuing. Now, where is this? What is this here? This is in event handler. So this is where click card is assigned to none. And this is necessary because this is the only place click card is set back to none. It is necessary because of associated logic in prog.py, which relies on this value still being equal to none for its proper logical flow, which is stupid, but it's not worth. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, it might be a little ugly or ghetto, but I can tolerate a little bit of ghetto, just a little bit, not a lot. Sometimes a little bit of ghetto will save you a lot of work, so it's fine. It's not causing no problems, not hurting nobody. So click art gets set to none. That is really just a place, like it is literally just what's it called, like ceremonial. It's not used on the client side. We set it to none. That's just so it gets transferred. That's all. Now it's transferred. That's why we do it that way, because it's just simple. It's an easy way to transfer the data. You just set the namespace to whatever you want to set it to, and it automatically transfers it. It's like it's automated. It's very cool. That's one of the main features of my project rather. Then if you have click to card, it sets the click card equal to whatever card you clicked, like I was talking about in the event handler on the client side. That packages it, adds it to the change attribute list. This happens within a single while loop iteration. As long as it makes it to the next while loop iteration, the click card would be part of the change attribute list. Therefore, it would make it to the server. If it didn't make it to the next while loop iteration, well, then it would revert back to click card active. Well, if it didn't make it to the next while loop iteration, well then you would still click card active would still be true, right? Yeah, like it should still be true. So if click card active is still true, which it should be when you reconnect, as long as you saved it. If it disconnected before it made it to the next while loop, but after you had clicked that card, well, that click card just would not have been registered. Like, it's not saved data. So when you would reconnect, you would just have to click that card again. But it wouldn't actually cause a quote-unquote bug. So, like, I don't think we need to save this based on that logic. Unless there's anything else. So it does check to see if click card is not in clicked cards list. But that is all atomic. It all happens together. So like this is in the same iteration of the while loop, meaning it's not gonna, like, this is not to be what concern. Like we do check it on the client side technically, but it's immediately after it is assigned, before it could have been lost through a disconnect. So like ultimately we're safe. Like that, we don't need to save it. Continuing. This is in clicked cards list. clicked card is not equal to none, and highlight clicked card is equal to true. Okay, now this actually might, like, this might actually mean that it needs to be saved. If this happens, if this is checked immediately before, immediately after you click the card within the same while loop iteration, then we don't need to save it. But if this is checked in a subsequent while loop iteration, then in the case that we didn't save it and restore it back to whatever it was upon reconnect, this would not work correctly. Okay? So the question is, does this happen before or after? If it happens after, immediately after, but within the same while loop, then we don't need to save it. If this happens in a different while loop iteration, we do need to save it. So let's see here. I think event handler gets called at the beginning of draw window main. It does. So as you can see, there's event handler being called right here at the beginning of the draw window main function. And then that is what handles the section we were just looking at, where the click card right here. This is in event handler. This is where the click card gets assigned, and then immediately after it goes to this section, which checks the clicked card. So this is in this is after, but within the same while loop iteration. Therefore, we do not need to save this, because, and I want to be real careful here, this clicked card will be available. If it hadn't made it to the next while loop, like once it makes it to the next while loop iteration, it's not needed. It's gone. Like it's not a thing anymore. Does that make sense? There is no functionality that happens on it. The only functionality that happens on the click card, the only time it is accessed or needed, is when the player clicks a card on that one iteration of the while loop. They click the card, it gets registered, added to the change attribute list. Immediately after, we check the click card in the same iteration to see if we highlight it. If it's not highlighted, it triggers it to be highlighted. That's a different story. And then if it makes it to the next while loop iteration, we don't need the click card ever again. Like the click card is basically thrown away, and then there is the next clicked card. Does that make sense? There is no reason to have this click card saved, unless you wanted to say that, like, highlight click card you wanted it to save, you wanted to make sure that it re-highlighted that card on a disconnect. But if it didn't make it to the end of the while loop iteration, if it did make it to the end and highlight click card isn't saved, then yeah, you would lose the highlight. The highlight would be gone whenever they reconnected. So there is that, because it would register the click card as being equal to none. I don't know though. Maybe the draw highlight rect would persevere through the uh, reconnect. You know what I mean? Um, I'm not worried about it. That is such a minute thing, the highlighting of the card. Honestly, I'm just straight up, I don't care. I don't care about it. So yeah, final answer is gonna be no, we don't need to save it. And all this stuff that I'm looking at right now is server side. We don't have to worry about it at all for we don't have to worry about it at all for like, it has no bearing on whether or not it should be saved. Okay, that was a nightmare as well. That one was hard. But did we need to go back and revisit it? Yeah, because I don't think I looked at it in that same way. So despite the answers being the same, they could have been different if because I didn't look at them in the light that I just did. So we're just gonna copy this and say basically the same thing. It's definitely not necessary to save. It's not needed on CS. Plus is added to change out of loose at time of change. Definitely save. With the caveat of it influencing whether or not the card remained highlighted. But like, let's see, could we just like save it? If we just saved it and loaded it back in, would there be anything wrong with that? Not really. It wouldn't. The click card set back to none whenever whenever they click the next card, so it would remain that clicked card, but the highlighting only happens from the timestamp of the time in which the player clicked the card. So if they disconnected and then reconnected, the 2 seconds would have passed. Therefore, it would not. I would have to add in special logic that compared the time of the disconnect against the time of the highlighting of the card initially, and like subtract the difference so it would pick up where it left off if it had 1.5 seconds left of highlighting, you know. But I'm not worried about that. That's fucking petty. I don't care about it. It's not a big deal. The answer is no. Moving on. Done. Oh, God, it feels nice to move on from that shit. But now we know. Now we know. So, internal clicked card. Do we need to save it? Well, no, we don't, because again, it's just like clicked card. It's not needed, therefore the internal is not needed. If we were to save the internal, it wouldn't matter because it's not used. Does this make sense? It is set, it is used within the same while loop iteration, then it is basically thrown away. We never touch it again. The next time they click a card, it gets set to none and then is set to the card that they clicked. So we don't need it. The answer is no. Cool. All right. Enter continue text active internal. so I think we went through this, right? Basically, if the setter gets called on a reconnect, and if we deem that the actual property associated with the internal value does need to be saved, then whenever we would reconnect and set that variable, it would call the setter and it would intrinsically set the internal value, right? So, like, it is purely derivative, and since the setter would be called, then it would be properly set. On top of that, okay, well, this is what is returned by the getter, which is important. I would prefer not to save anything that has to be. I would only like to save the exact things that need to be saved. If it derivatively would set this every time without fail, which I'm pretty sure it would through the setter on a reconnect, that means we don't need to save this. We don't need to save any of these internal ones, actually. I just don't. I think the answer is going to be no. I don't see the answer being yes to this. And continue text active is equal to val. See, so this setter calls it. It eventually gets called through the setter. Now, let's think about it. What next? This is the only place that it's used. And since enter continue text active gets saved, which I already know that it does, but I'm just going to verify. So enter continue text active. Let's highlight it and see, does it get saved? And the answer is going to be yes for sure. There it is. Okay, so it is saved. Therefore, do we need to save the internal? No, it's going to be derivatively set. No, I'll just put a note because derivative. I don't need to make an explanation for that. It's pretty clear. Alright, well, unfortunately, that's where we stop. I wish I wouldn't have spent so much time on those two, but I am proud of the fact that I was diligent. I'm not proud of the fact that it had to consume like half of my session. I'm pissed off about that, but I mean, I can't really be mad. I should have been more diligent the first time when I reviewed it, and I wouldn't have questioned whether or not it needed to be reviewed again, right? So it's a lesson learned to make sure you are getting it right the first time and documenting everything, every little thing that you can think of. All the little shit that you go, oh, I don't need to write that. That's not going to be important. Well, guess what? It's probably going to be important. Alright, so now let's go ahead and stage commit. We're on the root of the project directory, which, yep. So now we do git branch. to check we're on the right branch. We are. We're gonna do git add dot to stage everything. Git commit dash m, paste in our devlog message. There goes our successful commit. And then we can do git push or girt push like me if you're typing badly. And now it will push it up to the cloud. There it goes. Now we're back out. We're gonna go over here to programming projects. We're gonna change this backup date to be today's date, which is the 8th. We're gonna enter into the main, copy it, delete the old one from the backup, and paste in the new one. And then we're just gonna triple check to make sure it is indeed the up-to-date version, which it is. And there we go. Now we have a local copy. Good progress. Got tangled up on those two, but I needed to review that anyway, because that will influence how I handle other attributes. It's very important that it does make multiple while loop iterations and not just one. So I needed to know that. I needed to be refreshed on that. Yeah, so almost through that file. There's, how many more left do we have in this file? I just want to see real quick. We have that's it. Just the internals, the underscore. That's it, which is cool. So we're definitely gonna finish this next session. Like this is for sure gonna be done the next session that we do. And then, like I said, this was the biggest file. The rest of them are gonna be mostly like easy. This one will probably take me 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes. That one doesn't need to be saved because that's only server side. Same there, same there, same there. Basically same there. So we're looking at like 10, 15, 20. We're looking at like less than 30 minutes to do all this. And then probably like, I would say 30 minutes to do the rest of this file. So you're looking at 1 hour and we will actually be done with this task completely. And then we just have to like finish compiling the list and like adding the attributes to the list, and then make all the logic to load in that data upon reconnect, which ain't gonna be that hard. So yeah, very exciting. So close, like this close, dude, to being done with this task. And yeah, so I'll see you guys later. Going to the gym, gonna eat,